Welcome back to Following Noadon, a Stormlight podcast. This week, I have yet to decide if this is episode 225 or not, because last week was 224, but this isn't really an episode. So, Paul, how are you?
I'm doing good. If we're taking votes, I think this is not 225 yet, because it's a nice pseudo satisfyingly even number, almost. It's not 250. That's a more satisfying number, but sort of. Anyways, 225 in my brain, that's reserved for the next one. This is a for funsies. It's a bonus episode. Bonus episode number 1, you know,
Okay.
or 2.
Your opinion has been noted and promptly ignored. Elliot, how are you?
I'm doing great. I'm doing excellent. I'm ready to win you guys over with my extremely strong opinions.
Sounds good.
That always
We have
works.
completed the Cosmere as of, or for the next 2 weeks. And so we've decided to do an old-fashioned tier list of how we feel about each Cosmere work. And then we will come to a consensus on the podcast civilly on how we will rate the average, the median mode.
The mean or
the
average
mean.
was the same thing.
The mean list for Following Noadon podcast will be published by the end of this episode. So let's roll intro and then get straight to it. All right. I have decided independently that we are going to go in reverse alphabetical order because that puts us starting with White Sand. And White Sand will be put in the bottom TBD list because we have not read White Sand, and that's the only reason why we're doing reverse alphabetical order. Any objections to White Sand and TBD?
No, that's what I rated it. I rated it there because it's to be determined. We haven't read it yet. It's the only one of this list that I think we have not read. At least at all. Yeah.
Okay. Moving on from that. Our first actual one is Words of Radiance. Words of Radiance. Paul, what did you rate Words of Radiance?
Okay, so starting off hot, hippity hot, Words of Radiance, I had, as a side note, I'm going to go and intro this here so that I talk less going forward. Trevor told us we could grade these books on any criteria of our choosing, essentially, like within reason, not like some random thing, even though maybe he would have let us do that. But essentially, up to our discretion, rate these books. Our tier list goes from D to A plus S tier, And I was pretty strict on this. I don't have many S tier books, but this is one of my S tier books. Fantastic book. One of my favorites, of course, of Stormlight, which is my favorite series. So without further ado, I have it as S tier.
Elliot, what do you have?
A quick blurb on my approach to the ratings as well. I rated all these books. I tiered them all based on my experience of them. And I want to say that because I do think there's going to be a few cases where maybe quality of writing is not what I'm looking at. I'm looking at my experience of it, my personal preferences. What did I get out of the book? Did I enjoy it? Those kinds of questions. So with that as my caveat, I rated Words of Radiance as A plus, a little plus next to it here. A plus, not quite the top, but pretty close.
Okay. I also rated with the similar criteria that Elliot did. How much did I enjoy said book? I rated Words of Radiance in A tier, not A plus, not S, but A tier.
Wow.
Solid. Which I think we can all agree, unless Paul, you're going to really pull on this one, that lands at an A plus for the podcast, right?
I agree. Yeah, that's a good average of an A plus right there.
Okay.
So I'm winning. That's how this works. Yes.
Yes. Elliot has 1 point.
Sure, I guess. I don't know. No, it just
You are
means you're the
the
most
I am
most
the most
average.
average.
Yes.
the most average on this. Yeah.
All right. The second book, Well of Ascension. The second book of Mistborn. Elliot, what did you have?
I was afraid you were going to call me first. That was the one time where you don't want the teacher to call you on, and then they see the look on your face and they call you.
Yep, you gave the look on your face.
Oh, okay. Well of Ascension is without a doubt the lowest Cosmere book of all of them, and it's not a debate. Well of Ascension. I don't know which way is forward and which way is back. Well of
That is
Ascension.
backwards. That is
That
backwards.
one's backwards.
That is
Yeah,
forwards.
that's forwards.
Well of Ascension is in the D tier, y'all. And I will convince you if I have to.
I will go next. Not only is Well of Ascension D tier, Well of Ascension is the lowest D tier on the list, and it's not close.
I won't need much convincing. I also had it as D tier, and it's
Wow.
the
Wow.
but I do want to say first off, I did not actually specify the way that I'm grading the books is a little bit different from Trevor and Elliot. They are grading on how much they enjoyed the book. I'm kind of taking that into account, maybe 25% and about 75% of what if I were to sit down now that I've read all these Brandon Sanderson books, if I were to sit down and say, I want to pick up and read a Brandon Sanderson book, what book am I going to actually pick up and read? Like, what do I want to read? Sit down, really enjoy, want to read. And Well of Ascension was not it. So that also shows why Words of Radiance was S tier for me as well. I'm currently reading it and absolutely enjoying every moment of it. It's a great book. Anyways, pointing out there that that's my grading criteria.
Not only is Well of Ascension D tier, it doesn't even compare to the other Mistborn era 1 books. That's how poorly Well of Ascension scores for me.
And I want to just add too, like, it's when we read it, it was noticeable. It felt like a step down as far as experience of a book. There were noticeable parts where the book really dragged. We got to the end. There was plot development, there was character development, but there were whole like sections of the plot where I was thinking, why didn't we do anything there? I didn't actually learn anything more about the magic. These kinds of questions that just felt they really went wanting, and it was very surprising for me at the time because it was unlike any other Sanderson book I'd read. It was quite a surprise, very out of character.
All right, continuing with our W's. The Way of Kings. I'm going to lead this. Surprise to absolutely nobody. This is S tier for me. The top of S tier specifically. The best book on the list.
The Way of Kings for me is also S tier. I don't need to say anymore. It's good. Great book. Yeah.
No question about it. Way of Kings leads. It is the flagship story of the Cosmere. You ask me to tell you what book to pick up in the Cosmere, it's going to be The Way of Kings. Definitely S tier.
Sounds good. Don't have to argue anyone on that one. I feel like we need like a veto with like Woody's veto that this will go in this slot, whether you guys like it or not. Anyway.
We'll get to some more divisive ones. We've been on some kind, ones we're fairly close or unanimous on. So we'll get to those hot takes more.
All right. Rounding out to W is Warbreaker. Warbreaker by Brandon Sanderson. Let me caveat this rating. I'll go first. With the confirmation or with the citing that I did a disservice to this book on this podcast. The way we covered it was a disservice to the book. I just wanted to get to Oathbringer, and so we sped our way through Warbreaker. That being said, I rated Warbreaker C tier.
I'll hop in. I actually went a little bit higher with Warbreaker. I think it definitely has some flaws. It's not the best writing. It's been a long time since we've read that book now, so yeah, I was having a little bit of hard time remembering back to it, but I do remember it not flowing as well as other stories, but I think the characters actually in it are pretty intriguing. So it's very much like the middle of the road Cosmere book for me. B tier is where I stick it.
Okay. I had to think a lot on Warbreaker because I think it is the furthest back Brandon Sanderson book. Like, it's been the longest since I've read it. We read it a while ago, and I've since reread The Way of Kings and Words of Radiance, which were the only other books I think we might have read before. And so it's been a long time, but I reminisce about some of the things like Nightblood and Vasher's relationship, and there's a lot of fun stuff in the book. I think I would have rated it lower originally, but it's kind of grown in the back of my head as being really good, and so I have Warbreaker as an A tier.
Is that
Okay.
that Shalon cameo really kind of lifting it for you?
Yes, that was a big turning point for me. I will also say I think that Warbreaker is almost smack my breaking point of books that I love and books that I like. It was almost my litmus test. Like, I like it more than Warbreaker. It's a really great book. Like it less than Warbreaker. It's not near the top of my reread pile.
Does that average Warbreaker in B? Are we good with that? A C, a
I
B,
think
and an A?
Yeah, that sounds right. B tier
Okay.
for Warbreaker.
Elliot has another average point.
I could just send you my tier list at this point, and you can.
Yeah, there we go.
podcast.
We just
Yeah,
copy the
are we
answers.
matching yours directly so far?
Yeah.
So far,
All right. After W comes Tress of the Emerald Sea.
Wait. Hold on. Thinking of our reverse alphabet, are we skipping Yumi here? Do you Yumi and the Nightmare Painter be actually before our W's?
Where
They're labeled here as the secret projects 1, 3, and 4. They don't actually have their
yes,
titles.
that's why. I see.
Yeah.
Okay, you're right. Yumi, and I need to write Sunlit in here somewhere. Yeah, Sunlit goes here. Okay, let's back up and do Yumi.
Okay, I'm going to kick this one off then. I would wager that I probably have this the most highly rated out of all three of us. And I'll post my tier list separately afterward anyways. It may make more sense looking at the whole thing. I have Yumi and the Nightmare Painter as an A+. I bounced around on this for a while between A and A+, but as I look at the books that I have in my A tier, I think this one stands above it, but it's not near that top echelon. But A+ for Yumi for me.
I was up there towards you, and I briefly considered A+, and then it kind of settled into a very strong A for me. I rated Yumi highly. It's not quite some of those top tier experiences, but very solid.
I have Yumi as the bottom of A tier, below Words of Radiance, which would pretty well average it to an A. Paul, are you going to argue for an A+, or is that fine with you?
No, I'll leave it at an A. I'm fine with that. Also, as a side note, I think Trevor was the only one to order his tiers. Mine are not ordered. I have S tier, they're all essentially equal on their tier. But yes.
All right. That pushes us to Tress. Tress of the Emerald Sea. Paul, you can go first.
Okay, so this was actually my lowest of the secret projects. Spoiler alert for whenever we get to Sunlit Man. I had Tress in B tier. I think it was a nice story, and it had some really lovely moments, but it's not outstanding for me.
How does your wife Alex feel about your treatment of her favorite book there?
That was S tier for her. I might reference her tier list. We both made one, and hers was vastly different from what ours will be. She might not be thrilled with that, but this is my tier list, so B tier, it goes for me.
I
And
had
that's more of a
Tress.
testament to how great Brandon Sanderson's other books are, more than dissing on Tress.
It's true of a lot of these for me as well.
Yeah.
I also had Tress higher than you, but not quite as high as Alex. I slot it in A. It's basically right next to Yumi for me. I would rate the two nearly identical, maybe Yumi edging Tress slightly.
I have Tress as my lowest secret project as well, in B tier, the top of B tier, so just below Yumi. Does that put an average of B, or do we want to slide it to A?
I think that's an average of B. 2 Bs and an A. Yeah.
Works for me.
Alrighty. Let's go for Sunlit Man.
We should let Elliot kick this one off.
Yeah, we'll go for Elliot.
I gotcha. Sunlit was my favorite of the 3 secret projects, no question. Like we just talked about, we were coming off of that one, so it's freshest in my mind. This was an obvious one, though. It's not quite the pinnacle. It's not an S, but it's up there. A plus. A plus. I don't know how to do a plus. There we go.
Paul?
So I gave Sunlit an A, and I gave it with great deliberation. I was microscopic measurements away from actually giving it a B.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Oh,
In my head, I enjoyed it just about as much as Tress. Like in my head, as far as my enjoyment of reading, I think what edges it out is I'd much rather reread Sunlit Man because of the dense information and things to kind of mull over again. But as far as my enjoyment of the book, I think I enjoyed it just about the same as Tress. Or honestly, I might have enjoyed Tress more on an initial read. I think Sunlit has way more reread value though, so that eked it up to an A for me.
I gave Sunlit an A plus, right in the smack dab middle of A plus, which I guess averages A plus for us, the bottom of A plus, so we can leave it below Words of Radiance there.
I think so, yeah.
All right, next is Sixth of the Dusk, the Sixth of the Dusk novella from 2014. I will start this. Sixth of the Dusk is the bottom of A plus for me. Sixth of the Dusk is the best novella on the list.
Oof. Okay. So fights are about to happen, but not about this one, because you just said something that has highly offended me for another book in this list.
That one's B. I hate to break it to you, but we'll get there.
6. While I'm talking, I'll keep talking. Sixth of the Dusk. So this gets us into novellas. I'll admit I struggled with novellas. I find it really hard to compare in my mind between a 80,000 word or smaller novella and a 450,000 word epic fantasy. So I don't know. Overall, I think the novellas fall much lower on this list than maybe they would otherwise, just because there's so much more I get out of a larger work. And so my tier list probably favors the longer works over the shorter ones. I apologize to all the novella lovers out there. So a novella really has to impress me to make it high on the list. There is one that does so. It is not Sixth of the Dusk. Sixth of the Dusk is B tier.
Paul?
Okay. I want to say Sixth of the Dusk is not my highest rated novella, but I definitely want to echo what Elliot said of it was really hard for me to rate these novellas in the context of these big novels and series that we have going on. It was very difficult. However, Sixth of the Dusk was very good, but honestly, I think it's the one that I most owe a reread to. But
Okay.
I have it kind of middling the pack overall. Not in terms of novellas, it's one of the higher novellas, but I have it in B tier as well.
Okay. Does that average it an A for an A plus and 2 Bs, or does that average it a B?
A low A is probably where that
I
puts
think
it
it's either
mathematically. I would
agree.
agree
I
with
think it
something that Paul just said. I think overall it does edge out some of the other novellas for me. It actually is an intriguing one for sure. I feel pretty strong about my B, but I'm not going to cry if we edge it up to A for our average.
it's either at the bottom of A's or top of B's. So if we want to leave it there for now, I think technically it would average out to an A.
I just realized in us doing this average thing, we might just throw everything in A plus and A. That might end up how it happens. Okay.
We'll get some C's and D's, trust me.
We'll get there. All right. So carrying on with S, Shadows of Self, the second book in the Mistborn Era 2 series. All right, Paul, go ahead.
I'll probably get hate for this. Shadows of Self I have in the C tier.
Elliot?
You're not going to get any hate from me. That's pretty close to where I have it. I actually have it in B tier, which I'm a little surprised I rated it higher than you did to be honest. But Shadows of Self is another very middle of the road story. It's got a lot of positives. It's got a lot of meh. It's solid B tier.
Shadows of Self is A plus, gentlemen.
Wrong.
Which would average it to I think a B still.
I'd
So
say B, yeah.
that's fine.
I almost had it D. I moved it up at the end because I felt bad. So
As you should have.
yeah. I think it's more I think that's more fair. I think D was me being mean and personal bias. So
Trevor, do you
D
like
is
the
fine.
do you like the Lessie plot line in that book? What is A plus about it for you?
So A plus is purely on a reread. I would have given it C on my initial read of that book. But knowing it's Lessie, even from Alloy of Law, which we'll talk about last, yeah, knowing it's Lessie even from the get-go, it makes those first two books completely different, in my opinion. Okay. Shadows for Silence in the Forests of Hell. Novella from 2013 from Brandon Sanderson. I will start. This is one of the weaker parts of Arcanum Unbounded in B tier.
In B tier? That's your weak novella?
That is my weak novella, one of the weaker novellas.
Wow. Okay. I have this. So I have respect for Shadows for Silence in the Forest of Hell for the tidbits of knowledge that we learned from it. I have minor desire to reread it. I have this amongst the bottom of the pack in D tier.
Okay.
I definitely respect this story as well. I do need to reread it also. I didn't really feel much for this story. There wasn't much about the story that made me like it or want to know more. It's kind of like, oh, that's a sad planet. Let's go somewhere else. C tier.
That averages us nicely. Another average point for Elliot.
Yeah, there we go.
Definitely winning. Let's go.
So Elliot is just the balance between Trevor and I's extremes in either
Correct.
direction. Yeah. Okay.
All right. Secret History. Mistborn Secret History. Elliot, you can go first.
Solid C tier on this one. It's yeah. So some very interesting facts. Very, very interesting facts, actually. Storyline, lower half. Not the worst. C tier.
Gonna jump in right away to echo that. I gained a lot more knowledge from it than Shadows for Silence, which I had in D. I have Secret History in C for that reason. The story is not. It's. I liked some of the people we got to see, like getting to see Preservation and Hoyd and Kelsier, but the story, meh, C tier.
I also have it in C tier. And I will tease this. That is the highest Mistborn Era 1 rating I have.
Oof.
at the top of C.
That can't be right. Like, you're talking about the main novels?
Out of the first 3 novels and Secret History, it is the
Oh,
best of the
that's
4.
Oh my god. That's you're trolling.
Yeah, I'm not.
That's not legitimate.
All right.
Okay.
After
Okay.
Secret History, we are on to
Okay.
our Rhythm of War, the Stormlight Archive 4th book, 2020.
I'm gonna go first because I need to champion this one. I have a
Okay.
fear that you guys have done this book a disservice, and so I'm going to step up on the campaign stump and pitch for it. Rhythm of War is unquestionably S tier, and I want to defend it. I think there's a lot of people out there who give Rhythm of War a little bit of crap. They get a little bit lost in the sciencey-ness of it. They're just like, give me the action, let's go. If you read that book though, it actually has a lot of action in it. There's a lot of really fun segments of that book. I think the Sanderlanche is underrated. It gets a little overshadowed by Oathbringer. You've read Oathbringer, it was insane. You're expecting that in the Rhythm of War. It's not quite that frantic, but I think Rhythm of War really hits a sweet spot. You've got the dog and the dragon to close it out. The Kaladin story is great. The Navani story is great. The Navenli story is mostly
Adolin.
good.
Yeah.
It is solid S tier.
Paul?
Trevor, you should go next.
I have rated Rhythm of War A+, just slightly below Sunlit Man. And I actually talked about this in our Sunlit Man wrap-up. Rhythm of War, Elliot, you are saying, everything you're saying is correct. There's a lot of really good stuff in Rhythm of War. It does get pulled down by a lot of the sciencey stuff.
Do you guys remember the Shallan story? There's some epic development in the Shallan side of things.
Dismissing Veil at the end of the book.
And
yeah. However, it falls short where 2 other Stormlight books excel. So top of A+, bottom of S. That's exactly where I am. Paul?
The only thing crazy to me, I think, that you said is that you have it below Sunlit Man. In my opinion, that's a little much. However, okay, I put this in A+. That's where I put this book on my tier list. Elliot, you have me a little bit convinced because this is the one that I think I most need to reread. Ironically, it's the most recent one that we read, but
Yeah.
I feel like it's the one I need to sit on need to revisit the most because it actually starts maybe one of the most exciting openings. Very emotional, Moash, really the scenes that make you hate Moash. And you have incredible moments. You have a lot of the intrigue that was my favorite with Taravangian and Zeth and Dalinar and Odium in that book were spectacular. So I kind of want to amend that almost to an S. I felt obligated to put one, not obligated, but I think in the grand scheme, I think it was my least favorite of the 4 Stormlight Archive books, which is hard to say. So I've wrestled with this book a lot. I had it in A+, so I think I'm going to respect my initial decision.
I will say for Rhythm of War, if it were ever to be adapted, the Stormlight Archive, Rhythm of War would be my most anticipated. There is so much cinematic in Rhythm of War that could be incredible. The taking of the tower, the retaking of the tower, the pursuer with the heavenly ones all hanging around with their capes in the lobby there. Rhythm of War has incredible visual potential.
We get a lot of heralds, a lot more herald stuff, and there's a lot of really excellent moments. So
I'm happy with sliding it into S barely.
Do it.
I think it deserves S. I will vouch for it as well. I think it deserves S tier. And I wouldn't even say barely. I think it deserves S tier as an average. I thought y'all would both have an S tier. I thought I was going to be the odd one out here.
So I reserved my S tier for 2. And our next book is Oathbringer in O. And obviously, I have Oathbringer in S tier. does not need to be restated on this podcast. But my only conflict was putting the Way of Kings and or Oathbringer above the other. I've gone back and forth over the years. I think the Way of Kings is a little bit better than Oathbringer, but that being said, it's comparing a 49.5 to a 50 type thing.
Yeah, there's no secret. Oathbringer is S tier. I'm going to cause a little bit of controversy and actually tell you that I think Oathbringer is slightly below Rhythm of War. And it's
Okay.
not for the wow factor. Oathbringer has more of that. It's for the overall pacing and structure of the book. Oathbringer is really top heavy, like end heavy. There are some slow sections in Oathbringer that I think cause people some struggle. Rhythm of War, I think, is more well balanced, and therefore it slightly edges Oathbringer in just like overall experience for me. But obviously S tier for Oathbringer. Such a good book.
I also had Oathbringer in S tier.
Alrighty. That brings us to The Lost Metal, the fourth book of Mistborn Era 2. I will go first. I put The Lost Metal in A tier, just below Words of Radiance.
I will add to that because I also put the Lost Metal in A tier, and that was certainly my highest Era 2 rating.
Ditto to what Paul just said in every word.
Okay, for the sake of the visual here, above Yumi or below Yumi?
I would definitely have it below Yumi, but I was a high Yumi rater.
Right.
I could be swayed. I don't know that I feel strong. They're such different books. Hard to compare the two for me.
Can I cash in my chips and put
Yes.
Yumi above?
You don't need to cash in your chips for that.
Okay.
All right. It's crazy to go from The Lost Metal to Hope of Elantris.
My goodness.
All right, Hope of Elantris. This is the middle of D tier simply because it does not take away from the Cosmere. It's not bottom of D tier like the Well of Ascension is. It is middle of D tier because it does not add or subtract anything.
I also had it in D tier. I didn't have my D tier ordered, but if I were, it would be the bottom or next to one other short story. Just because it doesn't add or subtract. I'm glad I read it, and that's all.
I went higher. I actually had it in B tier.
Whoa.
But I think it might be riding the coattails of Elantris a little too hard. You guys said something there that might sway me a little bit, in that does it add anything to the Cosmere? Yeah, I don't know that I can say the answer is yes. Like, do I enjoy it? Is it a nice epilogue to tack on at the end of Elantris? Also, yes. Does it add anything important or increase the experience of the Cosmere? Yeah, no. You could probably average on the low end and drag this down to D tier for our average.
Sounds good. Alrighty. The Hero of Ages.
Ooh, here we go.
Okay, so I will start and
Oh,
say this is
no.
the best Mistborn Era 1 book without Secret History. Secret History takes all the best parts of the Hero of Ages and builds on them, but Secret History by itself has more good than Hero of Ages, and it's a quarter the length. So Hero of Ages is C for me.
Okay. I'm going to go next, if you don't mind, Elliot. So, all of the Mistborn Era 1 is vastly ranging in my tier list. Vastly ranging because we have Well of Ascension at D tier. I'm going to make a case for the Hero of Ages I've debated on this. I had it in A plus tier most of the time. I actually bumped it up to S tier. And the reason I will say this is because I think Mistborn is the most specifically plot driven series we have, right? The characters are good, we have that, and we have a lot of character development with our primary crew. But think of the development that happens specifically in this last book with Ven, Elend, and Sazed. Sazed going from questioning to becoming the Hero of Ages, which I think was a great plot twist, leading into all the questions and things that go into Era 2. You have the noble sacrifice and the development of Ven to know, love, and appreciate herself, which has been a very big arc throughout the entire story. While the Well of Ascension really was slow and dragging, the Hero of Ages is sped up and impactful. And Trevor, I will quote you yourself. You cried when you read the Hero of Ages. Is that
I
right?
did.
You told me that was the case.
Yes.
It is emotional. It is impactful. And I think it is a fantastic ending to a story that basically will wow any reader reading it, especially for the first time. So I think it deserves some respect. I think it is really good as far as the story goes. I think it's the only one that has really wowed me with the Sanderlands and with the final moments. Not to mention, there's so much other stuff I can go into. Spook and many of our other characters that really, I think, get to shine. I think it's deserving of a high rating. I think it's the best, most wow factor I've gotten from a Cosmere book aside from Stormlight.
We have it averaging at an A, Elliot. How do you move the needle?
I am going to move the needle. I am much closer to one of you than I am the other. And the one I am closer to is Trevor. The rating I have for Hero of Ages is a solid B tier. I think Hero of Ages, best Era 1 Mistborn book, without a question, for me. It is epic. It does have a lot of the positives that you're talking about, Paul. I gave Hero of Ages one of the lowest ratings in a single rating category of any book Brandon's ever written, and that was theme. I really hit hard in that I didn't think there was a cohesive enough theme in that book. There were a lot of really good moments. I didn't feel like it pulled together into a what am I walking away from this book with message. And that was kind of what hit it down for me. Character development, good. Yes. World building, excellent. Plot, pretty good. But I think it still settles in around the B range for me. I don't know where you want to call that as averaging out for across the three of us.
I think that holds the A.
Yeah, I think so. If we're averaging it,
right?
I'm really pulling it up for y'all. But yeah,
you cannot breathe the Hero of Ages in the same breath as the Way of Kings in the same tier. That there's no way you can.
So my previous, I tinkered with my tier lists a lot before we recorded this, and I always had it in A plus. I always had it in A plus because if I were to pick up a book, I would rather pick up The Way of Kings than I would The Hero of Ages. However, The Hero of Ages was one of the most enjoyable books, I think, to read for the first time, and for the ending specifically, and all the moments. And I think I would still choose it over a lot of the other even really great books like Rhythm of War if I were to go pick up a book.
I see. All right, well, leave it in A and move forward from there. The Final Empire.
This one, for me, is above Well of Ascension, but below Hero of Ages. I kind of spread mine evenly in Era 1. Well of Ascension is the lowest. Hero of Ages is B. That leaves Final Empire sitting in C tier for me, which makes me a little bit sad because there actually is a lot about that book that I enjoy. I think Vin is a great character and her introduction is great. I think the book just doesn't quite scratch the right itches for me, and it's kind of a little depressing.
It is a little bit angsty, but I do not mind some angst. I don't have it crazy high. I had this at like the bottom of my A tier because looking at the books I have in B tier, I would definitely prefer it. And I think Mistborn does a really great thing for the Cosmere in general. I think it's an excellent on-ramp for the Cosmere in general. It's a lot easier to pick up and understand in the Way of Kings. It's more of a standalone book, and I can kind of respect it for that. And it kind of ticks all the boxes. It's not the best at most things, but I think it's way better than a lot of the other books. I think it does everything well and right, but it's not the most creative and inventive. It's more functional. So I have it sort of in the middle of the pack, almost tying. It's in the same tier as Warbreaker for me, and it kind of ties in that regard of like not my favorite, not my favorite. You know, like not low, but not high.
Mhm. So just to clear this up, you have the Hero of Ages in S, the Final Empire in A, and the
Mhm.
Well of Ascension in D.
Correct. Yes, I
Wow.
did say that my Mistborn Era 1 is by far the most sporadic. The Well of Ascension, the only cool moment it has is you get a moment with Zeth. Sorry, not Zeth. What's his name? The other edgy
Marsh?
guy. No,
Oh,
his name starts with
yeah,
a Z.
Zane.
Zane. Yeah,
Oh,
you
that
get the
guy.
edgy moments with Zane and kind of crazy
Yeah.
moments with him. Other than that, there's really nothing to it. It's a mystery that wasn't that fulfilling in my brain. Mistborn, the Final Empire, I think was very functional, and I think the Hero of Ages was really great. So, yes, you are right.
I
S, A, and D.
I rated it a C, but I am willing to allow the average to slip to a B between an A and two Cs because looking at this, I do think it's better for Shadows of Silence. So within the context of our collective score, I'm fine with putting it in B tier and swaying this one towards Paul.
I do think we're doing Tress a pretty big disservice by putting Final
Yes.
Empire in the same category as it, but as long as they're on different ends of the spectrum of B, I can accept it.
Yes. Well, and the fact that the Hero of Ages is above Tress is wild to me on this. I just want to point that out. But
That's not that crazy. Come on.
yes, it is.
Tress
All
is
right.
good, but it wasn't that good. You know what was going to happen the whole time. Anyways, we'll move on.
The Emperor's Soul. The Emperor's Soul, our novella on Cell.
All right.
I have already revealed this. I will go first. This is B tier. It is not the best the Cosmere has to offer. It is not the worst. It is perfectly average of B.
I'm gonna go next because I need to rebut that. The Emperor's Soul is with no question the best novella out there. The other novellas, they do their thing and they do it fine. They get a point across, they give you a nugget of information that you need in the Cosmere. The Emperor's Soul is a fantastic standalone story. I absolutely love the character progression and the way the information is like trickled to you throughout the different days in Emperor's Soul. It doesn't even have chapter numbers, it just has days. It's like day 5, day 33. Super creative, really captivating characters. You don't even spend that much time with the characters. And I, for some reason, love Shy and Gautona and even the Emperor is like intriguing by the end of it. I think it's a super cool, condensed down, can take it just for what it is and enjoy every bit of it story. It is A+ tier for me, no question.
And I'm rounding out with our average this time. I have it. It is my highest rated short story or novella or Arcanum Unbounded piece at A tier. And it is the only novella piece that has made it that high. And for a lot of the reasons you're saying, Elliot, for me, primarily, I think the plot ending was very very, I don't know, it just really hit hard. It was very kind of tragic, kind of peaceful. Like there was a weird bittersweetness to the end of Emperor's Soul that I think was really masterfully done.
The other thing that I really like about Emperor's Soul is I feel like it's a really good sampling of Brandon Sanderson. It
Yeah.
has become my new go-to for recommending to someone who's hesitant about reading any Sanderson. If I know they're not really going to like Mistborn and they're way too intimidated by A Way of Kings, I actually suggest Emperor's Soul to a lot of people because I think it's very approachable. It's going to give you a good feel for what his writing is like. It's not super technical on the magic, but it definitely is going to get into like magic systems. And if you don't like that, then the Cosmere is probably not for you. I think the Emperor's Soul is a great litmus test for, is the Cosmere for you?
Yeah, it definitely does that purpose. I just like Six of the Dusk better.
But you can't hand Six of the Dust to someone. Like you can't start somebody there.
Sure you can.
No.
Sure you can. Okay. I'm going to leave it in A.
Criminal, but it's fine.
This one will be interesting. The 11th Metal. The 2012 short story for D&D campaigners in Mistborn world. How do we feel about this one?
So I had to actually look this one up again. I actually read the, what's it called, the website thing that's all knowing.
The Coppermind.
Yes, the Coppermind. I actually read the Coppermind summary to kind of refresh myself because this is a very short little tidbit. To go ahead and say it, I put this in B tier. After quite a bit of deliberation, it started very low, honestly, because I didn't remember it. But going back, I think this was really neat backstory to Kelsier that was very. It was a really satisfying nugget of information to understand kind of what makes Kelsier tick and kind of a bit of the context for him without really even having to dive into plot and these other things that maybe the Secret History did that I didn't necessarily love, I guess. So I had this higher than the Secret History. I had it as a B.
I have this on C or D tier. It is a waste of time.
Strong words. I'll average us and give it a C. For me, 11th Metal, Secret History, Shadows for Silence, and spoilers, Pits of Altania, Almancer Jack, all those are the exact same for me. Pick them up. They're fun. Sure. They're great. Not amazing. C tier.
All right, fine. We can skip to the Pits of Altania. No, it's Pits of Altania is A tier.
No.
Pits of Altania is fun. You read that
Sure.
sub script from his little terraceman dude. Paul, have you even read Pits of Altania?
I did. Yes, I did. I did pick through it. We didn't like talk about it on the podcast or anything, but I am with Elliot on this one. I think it's a fun read, but I'd leave it at that.
It's just goofy. It's meant to be goofy. It's not supposed to weigh up against the other things.
Absolutely. And so
Sure.
I had a hard time placing it for that reason. I honestly bounced between C and D. D on the same note would have been the same thought of the Hope of Elantris type of reasoning of like,
Okay,
not
didn't-
this.
I didn't think I'd be doing this, but I cannot leave the Pits of Altania down with 11th Metal and Shadows for Silence. I'm using my whatever,
What did you
gavel
have it
thing.
rated at? Did you have it
An
an
A.
A?
I'm pulling it up to a B.
You're going to put it on the same level as Tress? You're going to put
Yes,
Alamancer
it's-
Jack
I
next to Tress.
I laughed out
Element.
loud when reading Pits of Altania because of his little subnotes. They completely make that story. I did not think I'd be this opinionated on Pits of Altania.
All right, you're welcome. Go ahead, cash in your chips. That sounds
All right,
good.
my chips have been used to pull it up to B tier, just below the Final Empire. Oh my goodness. Okay, where were we? 11th Metal, Elantris. Who wants to go first?
I love Elantris. I had it as an A+. I think it's easily my front runner for theme in all the Cosmere. Well, front runner, and there are maybe comparable or other great moments in the Stormlight archive, but Elantris does fantastic. I enjoyed it far more than I thought I would. I think it was a very charming read. It was nice to have characters that are easy to root for. Once again, I think the theme was great. So I had it as an A+ for my opinion.
Elantris is a bit of an oddball for me because it is the only book on this entire list that I read via audiobook. Every single other one, I read the physical paper copy. Elantris, I did not. I also read it much quicker than the rest. I read Elantris over the course of like 2.5 weeks, whereas the rest of these books usually take me months. So that said, my take on Elantris is a little bit skewed. I need to go reread it to maybe get a more accurate sense of where it sits. But I actually have the exact same rating as Paul, A+ for exactly the same reasons. I enjoyed a lot about it, and it was actually a really great read with a lot of good takeaways.
I have Elantris at B, not because I don't enjoy it, but because it suffers so much from Brandon's first novel. If Brandon were to write Elantris today, it would be S, I think. And that, with that said, Elantris 2 is one of my most anticipated titles. I think Elantris 2, with current day Brandon Sanderson writing it, can be incredible. Like, I'm really looking forward to it. Elantris itself suffers a lot from the point of view, him specifically alternating between 3 points of view every single day, exactly what they're doing at the same time. Because there are some times where Sereni's not doing anything. There's some times when Raoden's not doing anything, and Hrathen. So I had it be. I'm fine with leaving it on A+ because I'm fairly harsh on Elantris, but I'm fine with an average of an A+. That's fine with me.
I want to say one more thing. I do think that the biggest shortcoming of Elantris is maybe the ending. It doesn't have that real Sanderlanche impact that we've come to really love and be blown away by a lot of Sanderson's books. So I definitely can see that. And I do always hear this. Elantris was his first novel, and so it was a bit missed, maybe. But maybe I had too dire of expectations going into it, but I don't think that I felt it that much. I think there's no problem with the linear or predictable alternating perspectives, and I think if he wrote it today, it would be largely similar. I think there would maybe be more payoff at the end, but I think it would be largely the same, even if he wrote it tried to rewrite it now, So I feel like it's been more unfairly and this isn't just you saying that, Trevor. Like, most people that have read Brandon Sanderson, I feel like, say like it suffers from the first book. I think that the Final Empire suffers more from being a quote first, like, early book than Elantris does, of
Sure.
kind of having to pigeonhole a good little bow ending, rather than Elantris. I feel like it got to do its own thing still.
I do think it's a little crazy that Elantris is above some of those A tier ones we have, but I will hold my peace.
I'm okay if it averages out to 8 tier. I do understand. I think either
A+ is
or
fine.
A+.
Edgedancer. Paul, Edgedancer.
Okay. Edgedancer, I have this might get me some disrespect here. I have it as a C tier. I think that Edgedancer was good, but not great. I do think there were some neat moments, and this is one that I do have kind of on my reread radar. But so I was largely comparing this. I'll talk about this other one later, but I was largely comparing it in my head to Dawnshard, and that and looking at the other books, I couldn't put it personally. I couldn't put it above like Six of the Dusk. I couldn't put it above. There's other books in my B tier we haven't talked about yet, so I'll remain quiet. well, there's only a couple left. I don't know if that spoils things. Anyways, I couldn't put it above Dawnshard in my mind, and several others, and so it kind of landed itself in C tier.
I think it's gooder than Paul thinks it is, but still not great. B tier for me. Great story, just suffers from being a novella.
I think it is C tier, so we will leave it in C tier. Paul, it's interesting that you said it is not on my reread list. Like, obviously, I've read it more than you have, but it is completely forgettable to me. For me, you pick up Edgedancer, you learn about Nail, you learn about a little bit about Zeth, you learn about Lift, and then you forget about it. I don't.
On Mr. Kremling Man.
Mr.
Yeah.
Kremling Man, but there's nothing in Edgedancer. I mean, the Kremlings do kind of blow your mind on the first time, so maybe a little bit, but other than that, I don't know.
Should
a
we
Lift hater.
pair Dawnshard with it? Because I have some thoughts that kind of tie in here.
Yeah, Dawnshard's next anyway.
Perfect. I feel like not that it's any notable amount of vastly being better, but I do think that Edgedancer kind of walked so that Dawnshard could run in a way of we're
Yes.
introduced to the Sleepless, and then I think Dawnshard is where you get to have fun. You get to really you actually get to hear conversations of Sleepless and kind of get like a glimpse into their dynamic and all the things, which I think was wildly fascinating. It is my highest of the novella short stories aside from Emperor's Soul. I had it at the very top of my B tier. It was still B tier for me, because I couldn't put it up in my A tier. I have, Emperor's Soul, Warbreaker, Lost Metal, Sunlit Man. Dawnshard is not there for me, but it is really good, and it has a lot of really, good moments. So Dawnshard is a B for me.
Dawnshard is also a B for me.
And I'll make this easy. It is right next to Edgedancer in tier B.
Alrighty. That leaves our Mistborn Era 2 with the Bands of Mourning. I will start. Before we read it on the podcast, I thought Bands of Mourning was my favorite Mistborn Era 2 book. I think it is now my least favorite Mistborn Era 2 book. I rated it a B.
It was also my lowest Mistborn era 2 book for honestly reasons I can't remember that much, but I think that might just say it all right there. I don't know that I walked away from that book with anything super big. So I had it C tier for Bands of Mourning.
Okay, I'll try to add a little more here. So Bands of Mourning was sort of middle of the road for me. For me, it was where I really started to enjoy the characters of Mistborn Era 2 more. I think if people might remember, that was kind of my turning point a bit. We get to see really great moments with Wax and Marisi and some other good moments. The only place it really struggled for me, I didn't necessarily love the ending and the suspense of the ending. It was good, but it wasn't my favorite. I had it in B tier. Of it's not as good as the Lost Metal, but I did like it more than the other Mistborn Era 2 books.
So did we all just rate it B? Elliot rated it C? Yeah, okay. So we'll leave it at the bottom of B tier. It sounds fitting.
So we have
And
Alamater Jack over it. Just as
we-
a side note.
we do have Alan Mr. Jack over it.
That's fine. Just pointing it out.
Last but not least, the Alloy of Law. I have the Alloy of Law as my third favorite Cosmere book, at the top of A+.
Whoa.
Yeah, I've got C tier on that one. It was all right. So I'll let Elliot talk. That's all I have to say.
I don't know how we're going to reconcile this because I have it as a very hesitant B tier. I liked it more than Bands of Mourning, but definitely less than a lot of other books. What? Okay, hold on a second, Trevor. Where did you rate the Lost Metal, Trevor?
I rated The Lost Metal in A. I rated both Alloy and Shadows of Self in A+, and then Bands of Mourning in B.
Wow.
So let me just get this straight. You had
Wow.
The Way of Kings, Oathbringer, then you
Alloy,
had
the Alloy
then
of
you
Law,
had
Shadows of Self.
Alloy of Law, Shadows of
Oof.
Self, and then you had Words of Radiance, Rhythm of War.
No.
right?
I have The Way of Kings, Oathbringer, Alloy of Law, Shadows of Self, Sunlit Man, Rhythm of War, Sixth of the Dusk, and then Words of Radiance.
Can you talk about Words of Radiance again? Can you please tell me why it's A tier when Alloy of Law and Shadows of Self are A+ tier?
The Alloy of Law is so fun. You pick it up and you're like, man, this is really fun. We're jumping around on bullets, we're shooting around corners, we're pushing other people's guns back into their barrels and stuff. Like, that's really fun.
But the Hero of Ages was C tier fun, but you thought this Mistborn was A+ tier
The Hero
fun.
of Ages is not fun.
They're jumping around killing the Koloss, and
No.
she's like shooting the bullet, the arrowheads like back through the things. But that might not be Hero of Ages, actually. I don't remember which one specifically.
That's the one.
But just pointing out your physics thing. Okay, I'm gonna hop off. I won't keep going on this,
no.
but I'm a little surprised.
The Hero of Ages, the entire time you're turning pages and you're like, all right, who's going to die next? Well, the world is going to explode any minute now. At no point in Alloy of Law have I ever considered anyone's going to die. I'm like, man, this is so fun. I'm just getting to meet some characters. Yeah.
Okay, but you read Shadows of Self and you're like, okay, who's going to die? Oh, wait. It's Wax's wife who was already dead again, and we're killing her again. Okay.
In Shadows of Self, yeah. That's why Alloy of Law is above Shadows of Self.
Okay, nice.
But by the end of Alloy of Law, you like read. I agree. It's fun. It's lighthearted. You're introduced to Wax and Wayne, who are a good duo, no question. But I get to the end of Alloy of Law and I go, okay. And I immediately need to pick up the next book because the story didn't take me anywhere. Shadows of Self takes you somewhere, and it is like a necessary. Alloy of Law and Shadows of Self should be one book. If they were, I think it'd be much better. But Alloy of Law as its own, it's a prologue.
Yeah, okay. And you're jumping around the whole time, and at the end of it, you get Marsh coming out of the alleys like, hey, I've got a book for you. And you're like, oh, that's so cool. I need to read the next one.
But obviously you didn't like Marsh because Arrow 1 you had so low. Oh my gosh. Anyways.
No, Arrow 1 just suffers so much from the plot and the tone. Like Arrow
having
1,
a good plot.
The characters are so much better than the rest of the book.
I think this one more than ever of any of our videos, we need feedback. I think anyone listening or watching should comment or
take a look at our final product. Is there anything that grossly offends you? Do we need to shuffle anything in the tiers? Do we need to fudge some numbers here? Anything that like you look at that and you're like, I can't have my name published with this?
I don't see anything that is grossly incorrect. It's actually very similar to mine in a lot of ways. I think I was a bit of an average of the two of you throughout quite a bit of that. I see a lot of similarity. All my quibbles are smaller quibbles. I just feel strongly about them. That Emperor's Soul is the biggest injustice of this whole thing. Having that not in A+ is just a tragedy.
Oh, we should definitely put Emperor's Soul above Hero of Ages. I'm all for that.
You know what? I'll give it to you. I think that's fine. If it's that, it should be above Six of the Dusk. We'll be honest. We'll be real here.
The ceiling.
So whenever it's your book, you're not relenting.
The ceiling of Emperor's Soul is the other novella that it has to contend with.
Emperor's Soul is it is a different class of novella.
You've been outvoted.
No question.
Fine, I'll concede that one.
The
Lost Metal is better than both of them. We can keep that.
I don't need it to switch. I actually don't need it to switch. I'm okay with them being next to each other. I think that's fine personally. I will
I will
say,
concede.
after much strife, I really don't have any complaints with the tier list. I'm glad I counteracted Trevor heavily enough to make it a respectable tier list. I think the only one that's too high is Alloy of Law and Alamancer Jack, for the record. However, I'm not offended by their placement.
I think the only thing that is too high is Warbreaker, personally,
In B tier?
in B tier. Yes.
Interesting. Okay.
I think
B tier is fairly fitting.
I rated Warbreaker
I had it as A.
my lowest novel. It's above some novellas, but Warbreaker is my lowest novel.
Well, that doesn't count Well of Ascension. It's like,
Yeah, you're right. I forgot about Well of Ascension down there in the depths.
and the Hero of Ages. You had all
No,
that
it is.
down there.
It's below Hero of Ages.
Okay. Never mind. I'm sorry. I'll let it go one day. I promise. Anyways,
One final thought looking at this as a whole. I like it a lot. It actually fits a nice little bit of a bell curve as well. So the engineer in me is happy. Also, maybe Tress. Do we seriously have Tress as like average across the whole Cosmere? Tress is like our middle.
It's definitely worse than Alloy of Law. So if that's as high as Alloy of Law is going, then that's as high as Tress is going.
Elliot, where did you have Alloy of Law rated again?
Alloy of Law is B tier for me.
Okay.
Middle-ish probably of B tier.
Okay. I had it as a C. I had Tress as a B. I would much rather read Tress than Alloy of Law, but I also had Tress lower rated than y'all, which sort of surprises me.
I think we all had Tress in B, didn't we?
Oh, I have it in A. It is definitely A for me. But
What did you have, Trevor?
I have B. Top of
B.
B tier for Tress.
Okay.
I can accept the order that we have now. Just looking at the whole thing, seeing Tress in the bottom half feels a little sad.
That's fair.
Poor Tress.
Do we want to honorarily bump it up to the bottom of A? Does that feel better?
No, this looks more contentious and will make more people comment, so I'm going to leave it there.
Same
Fair
tier as Alamancer Jack. Boy.
All right, if you put it that way, then maybe I do have to move it. All right.
I just won't tell Alex that was her second favorite book behind Oathbringer. So.
Alrighty. We can close it there. I'm not sure exactly what's coming out next week, or maybe tomorrow, or maybe this comes out after something else. I don't know what's going on. But we will reconvene next week with something. Thanks for joining me, Paul and Elliot.
See you next time.
Yeah, always glad to be here. Just stay tuned. Who knows what else we might release. So, bye-bye.